It was a crisp December morning, and the world outside my window looked like a postcard, frost tracing silver veins across the glass. The hum of distant carols drifting through the street. Please stay with me as I tell you my story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for your support. Means the world to us. Now back to my story. I was sipping coffee, scrolling through photos of last year's Christmas. When my phone rang, it was Emily. Her voice was bright, cheerful, almost rehearsed. Hey mom, how are you? I smiled instinctively. I'm good. Sweetheart, just wrapping gifts. You excited for Christmas? There was a pause, then she said it carefully, softly, like someone placing glass on a shelf. Actually, mom, about Christmas this year. We might have to keep it small. The house is kind of crowded. And with Mark's parents coming, we're not sure there'll be enough room. For a moment, I didn't understand. I blinked, waiting for her to laugh, to say it was a joke. But she didn't. You mean you don't want me to come? I asked. It's not that, she rushed. It's just we're really tight on space this year. Maybe you could come after New Year's. My throat tightened. I forced a smile she couldn't see. Sure, honey, of course. After the call ended, I sat in silence, staring at the half-decorated tree in my living room. The lights blinked slowly, red, green, golds, but they felt cold. I'd been paying her mortgage for 2 years. Quietly, consistently, $2,500 a month. I never asked for thanks, just inclusion. Family, a place at the table. But in that moment, something inside me shifted. I picked up my phone again, not to call, but to open my banking app. My finger hovered over the auto payment switch. Then with one quiet tap, I turned it off. And just like that, Christmas would never be the same again. I didn't expect the silence to feel so heavy. After I canceled the mortgage payment, my house seemed too quiet, no Christmas music, no laughter, just the faint buzz of the heater in the background. For years, my support had been invisible, automatic. That single click felt like pulling a thread loose from a tapestry I'd spent years weaving. Days passed, no call from Emily, no text, not even a casual "Hey mom, how are you?" By the 5th day, I started to wonder if she'd noticed. Maybe she hadn't checked her account yet. Or maybe she had, and was waiting to see if I'd crawl back first. But I didn't. Instead, I started writing. I pulled out an old leather folder, the kind her father used for important documents, and began collecting receipts, bank statements, and every record of the payments I'd made. Line by line, month by month. $2,500 for 24 months. That's $60,000 in quiet generosity. I wasn't doing this out of spite. I needed proof. I needed to remind myself, and eventually her, that my love had always shown up in ways that didn't demand attention. Then 2 weeks before Christmas, my phone finally buzzed. Mom, her voice was tight, uneasy. Hey, I just noticed the mortgage didn't go through this month. Did something happen? I took a slow breath. No, sweetheart. I just thought you could handle it now. After all, it's your home. There was a pause, long, shaky, filled with confusion. Mom, why would you? I mean, you know we were counting on that. I know, I interrupted softly. And I was counting on Christmas. Silence again, then the call ended. That night, I sat at my desk, sealing the first of 12 red folders. Each one contained a truth, not about money, but about love, sacrifice, and what happens when someone forgets who stood in the shadows for them. And by Christmas Eve, those folders would find their way to her doorstep. By the second week of December, the folders sat neatly stacked on my desk, 12 of them, one for each Christmas I'd spent trying to hold my family together. Each folder was a piece of history: mortgage receipts, tuition payments, hospital bills, grocery transfers, all the invisible lifelines I'd thrown out over the years. And with each one, I added a letter. Not angry, not bitter, just honest. You once said I was controlling because I offered to help. I wish you knew that I wasn't trying to control your life. I was trying to make sure you didn't drown. As I sealed the 12th envelope, I thought about how it all began. After my husband died, Emily had been my reason to keep breathing. I'd worked overtime, sold my jewelry, and skipped my own prescriptions to keep her college dreams alive. I never asked for a thank you. Seeing her succeed was enough. But somewhere between the wedding vows and the new house, gratitude turned into entitlement. My help became expected. My presence became inconvenient. The night she told me not to come for Christmas, her tone was casual, as if it didn't break me in half. Mom, we just have so many guests already, she said, laughing lightly. Next year maybe. Next year. That phrase echoed in my head as I printed out the last document. There had always been a next year, the next visit, the next call, the next chance to be included. But this time, I decided there wouldn't be one. On December 23rd, I drove out before dawn. The folders tucked neatly in a box on the passenger seat. The city was still asleep, Christmas lights blinking lazily in the fog. As I approached her street, my heart raced. I wasn't angry anymore, just done pretending. I placed the box at her doorstep, took one last look at the house I'd helped build, and whispered, "Merry Christmas, Emily." Then I turned, walked away, and for the first time in years didn't look back. By the time the sun rose on Christmas Eve, I had convinced myself I'd done the right thing. Still, my stomach churned as I sipped my coffee, imagining Emily's face when she found the box. At exactly 9:17 a.m., my phone rang. Her name flashed across the screen. For a moment I hesitated. Then I answered. "Mom," she said, her voice trembling. What is this?" I stayed silent, let her speak. 12 folders with receipts. Letters, you canceled the mortgage. Her breath hitched. Why would you do that? How could you do that right before Christmas? I let the question hang between us, before answering softly, "The same way you uninvited me before Christmas." Quietly and without looking back. She didn't respond immediately. I could hear muffled voices in the background, her husband, probably pacing, demanding answers. Then her tone shifted from anger to disbelief. "You were paying for our house, all this time." "Yes, Emily, every month for 3 years. You didn't think banks just forget." The line went quiet. For a long moment, all I could hear was her breathing, shallow, shaky, like she was processing the weight of something she'd never considered. Then she whispered, "I thought you just wanted control." I exhaled slowly. "No, sweetheart. I wanted you safe. I wanted you to have the life I never did. But love that's taken for granted turns into a debt no heart can pay back." There was a wrestle, then a sob. "Mom, I didn't know." "I know," I said softly. "That's the problem." The call ended not with closure, but with silence, the kind that follows an earthquake when the ground is still shifting beneath your feet. That night, I lit a single candle by the window. No tree, no gifts, no noise, just peace. For the first time in years, I wasn't the giver or the fixer. I was simply me. But as the clock struck midnight, headlights flashed across my window. A car door slammed, then a familiar voice, broken and desperate, called out through the snow. "Mom, please, open the door." I froze. For a moment, I thought I was imagining it, the echo of Emily's voice, trembling in the cold night air. But then came another knock, louder this time, followed by muffled sobs. I opened the door slowly. There she was, my daughter, standing in the snow, her cheeks flushed and her eyes red. She was still in her Christmas sweater, the one I'd given her last year, though it hung loosely now, as if she'd aged 10 years in a single day. "Emily," I whispered. She didn't wait for an invitation. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me. Shaking, "Mom, I'm so sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "I didn't know, I didn't want to know. I thought you were trying to control me. I thought." "You thought wrong," I interrupted softly. She pulled back, tears spilling down her face. "David didn't tell me, he knew. He saw the bank statements. He told me you offered to help once, but that we were paying everything now. He lied, Mom, about everything." The words hit me like ice water. "He knew." She nodded. "He said it was better I didn't know. That it would make me soft. When I got your box today, and saw the letters, the copies of the payments, the notes you wrote on the envelopes, I confronted him. He finally admitted it." I took a deep breath, anger and sorrow twining in my chest. "I confronted him," she continued. "And he said she's just doing this to remind you she owns everything." That was when I saw it. The same look my husband used to have when he thought he could rewrite truth by saying it louder. I guided her inside, closed the door, and poured her some tea. The clock ticked quietly between us. "Mom," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "He told me if I chose you, I'd lose everything." I met her gaze. "Then it's time to decide. Emily, not between me and him, but between what's real and what's been bought." Outside, the snow kept falling soft, relentless, and cleansing, as if the world itself was trying to cover up the lies that had been buried for far too long. The next morning, I woke to the sound of coffee brewing and quiet footsteps in the kitchen. Emily was there, her eyes swollen but calm, flipping through the red folders I'd left on the table. Each folder held a year of receipts, mortgage payments, and letters, everything I'd quietly done for her family. When she noticed me standing there, she looked up and said, "You documented everything." "I had to," I said simply. "People forget the truth when money is involved." She swallowed hard, opening one folder after another. "You covered the down payment, the renovations, even the college fund for the twins." She shook her head, disbelief creeping into her tone. "And all this time, He told me we were drowning because of you. I sat opposite her. He didn't want you to see who was really holding things together. She looked away. He said you were manipulative. That you only gave so you could control us. I believed him. I let her words hang there. The silence was heavy, not just with guilt but realization. I kept hoping, I said slowly, that one day you'd see what I was doing wasn't about control. It was about love. The house was your father's dream for you. I didn't want it taken away. Her eyes filled with tears again. And now it might be. I reached across the table and took her hand. Maybe it's time it was. A house built on lies won't stand forever. Just then, a car pulled into the driveway, tires crunching on ice. Emily's head snapped toward the window. "It's David," she whispered. I felt my pulse quicken. He got out, dressed too neatly for a man whose world was crumbling, holding a single envelope in his gloved hand. "He won't stop," I murmured. Emily clenched her jaw. Then maybe it's time I did. As the doorbell rang, the morning light caught the stack of red folders between us. 12 years of hidden truths, ready to expose everything. The sound of the doorbell echoed through the house like a warning. Emily froze mid-step, staring at the front door as if she could see through it. The faint silhouette of David stood outside, his hand pressed against the glass panel, his posture stiff and impatient. "Do you want me to answer it?" I asked quietly. She shook her head. "No, I need to do this." I watched as she wiped her face, straightened her shoulders, and walked to the door. When she opened it, David's charm immediately switched on, that smooth, practiced tone that had fooled so many, including my daughter. He said softly, holding out the envelope. "We need to talk, please." Her voice was calm but sharp. "About what?" "David, the lies, the mortgage. Or how you convinced me to push my mother out of our lives." His expression faltered. "I didn't." "You did," I interrupted, stepping into view. His eyes flicked toward me, narrowing. "I should have known you'd be here," he said, his voice tight. Still meddling. "Huh, you just can't stand not being in control." I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Control? That's rich coming from a man who's been living off my money for years." David's jaw clenched. "You think cutting off the mortgage makes you the hero here? You're destroying your daughter's life, just to make a point." Emily turned to him, her voice trembling. "No, David. You destroyed it when you made me believe she was the problem." He stepped closer, his temper starting to slip. "You don't understand." But before he could finish, Emily lifted the stack of red folders from the entry table and thrust them toward him. "These say otherwise," she said. "Every payment, every lie, every time you said she did nothing for us, it's all right here." He stared at the folders, color draining from his face. "You might want to open your envelope now." I said evenly, "That's from the bank. The mortgage is back in your name." For the first time since I'd known him, David looked afraid. Emily closed the door slowly, firmly, and turned the lock. Then she exhaled, her hands trembling as she whispered, "I think I just took my life back." And for the first time that Christmas, I believed her. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the window, watching the Christmas lights flicker across the street, each twinkle reminding me of how fake everything had become. By morning, I had made my choice. The truth would not be spoken in anger. It would be shown. When I arrived at the lawyer's office, I brought 12 red folders, each containing a piece of the truth my daughter and her husband had buried beneath layers of lies. The first held the bank records, every mortgage payment I had made for 5 years, all $230,000 of it. The second showed the transfer agreement I signed with the bank, giving me partial ownership of the property. And the rest, well, they contained the kind of truths that change families forever. By evening, the house glowed with Christmas warmth, but I stayed outside, watching from my car. When the delivery man pulled up and dropped the package by their door, I could almost hear my daughter's laughter through the window. I imagined the moment she saw my name on the package. The laughter would fade, confusion would bloom, and soon after, realization. At 8:17 p.m. my phone buzzed. It was her. "Mom, what is this?" Her voice trembled. I took a slow breath. "Merry Christmas." "Sweetheart, those are your gifts, 12 of them." Silence, then the sound of paper shuffling, her breath quickening. "You can't do this, you wouldn't." "Oh, I already did," I said quietly. "You said the house was too crowded. I just thought I'd make some space." The line went dead, but the silence that followed was louder than any argument we had ever had. Across town, the storm I had unleashed was only beginning. The next morning, I woke to a barrage of missed calls and messages. My daughter, her husband, even her mother-in-law, they all wanted to talk. But I didn't owe anyone an explanation anymore. For years, I had been the silent helper, the invisible backbone of their perfect life. Now they were finally feeling what I had felt all along, disregarded and dismissed. By noon, the doorbell rang. I wasn't surprised when I saw them standing there, Emily, her husband Mark, and their two children hovering behind them. Emily's eyes were red from crying. Mark's jaw was tight, as though he was forcing himself not to explode. "Mom," she said, voice cracking. "Why would you do this? Why now?" I stepped aside, letting them in. The warmth of the fireplace clashed with the cold tension that filled the room. "Sit," I said simply. Emily hesitated but obeyed. Mark stood behind her, arms folded. I reached for the folder on my coffee table, the 13th one, the one I hadn't sent. "This," I said, sliding it toward her, "is the real reason." She opened it slowly. Inside were copies of the text messages I wasn't supposed to see, messages between Mark and his mother. "Once she finishes paying off the mortgage, we'll finally have the house." I told Emily to keep her sweet until then. "She's too emotional to see what's happening. Just nod and agree when her mom talks about money." Emily's hand flew to her mouth. Her face went pale. "What is this?" she whispered. Mark stammered. "That's not, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I interrupted. "I've been funding your dream home, while you plan to erase me from the picture." The air thickened. Emily stood up so suddenly that the coffee cup on the table tipped over, spilling dark liquid across the papers. She stared at Mark like she was seeing him for the first time. "You used me," she said. "You used my mother." Mark turned to me, desperate. "We were going to pay you back, eventually." I smiled sadly. "No, Mark, you were going to bury me under your comfort." But I decided to dig myself out first. For the first time in years, Emily didn't defend him. She didn't make excuses. She just sat there, trembling, the weight of truth sinking in. That was the moment I realized something. Sometimes, breaking a family isn't destruction, it's release. Outside, the snow began to fall again, thick and silent, covering the world in white. Inside, the warmth of the fire flickered between us, fragile but still alive. Christmas Eve arrived quietly. The snow had stopped falling, but the cold still lingered in the air. Crisp and unforgiving, I spent the day in silence, the house decorated just enough to remind me of the years when laughter filled every corner, before distance, disappointment, and pride carved us apart. I didn't expect anyone that night. The plan was to have a quiet dinner, open a single gift to myself, and let peace be my only company. But as I was setting down my plate, the doorbell rang. When I opened it, Emily stood there alone this time. Her eyes were puffy, her hair messy, her hands trembling as she held a small box wrapped in red and gold. "Can I come in?" she asked softly. I nodded and stepped aside. The warmth from inside seemed to make her cry harder. She sat on the same couch, where everything had fallen apart a week ago. "I left him," she said finally. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I couldn't stay after everything I learned. Not after what you showed me." I exhaled slowly. There was pain in her words, but also strength. She continued. "I thought you were trying to control me. I thought your help came with strings. But now I see. You were just trying to protect me from myself, from people who never had my best interests at heart." I didn't say anything, I just listened. For once, she wasn't talking at me. She was speaking to me. She pushed the small box across the table. "This is for you," she said. I opened it carefully. Inside was a tiny silver locket, one I hadn't seen in decades. Inside was a photo of me, holding her as a baby, both of us smiling under a Christmas tree. On the other side, engraved in delicate script, were the words, "Thank you for never letting go, even when I did." My throat tightened, I reached out. And for the first time in years, we embraced without words or walls. It wasn't a perfect reconciliation. There were still wounds, still scars, but it was a beginning. When she left that night, she turned at the door and said, "Mom, thank you for the 12 folders. I finally understand what love looks like. It's not giving without limits. It's knowing when to stop." After she drove away, I sat by the fire and smiled through my tears. For years, I had believed I lost my daughter to the comfort of a house I helped build. But in losing that, I had given her something far more valuable: clarity, strength, and the courage to stand on her own. Outside, the stars shone brighter than they had in years. And as the clock struck midnight, I whispered to the empty room, "Merry Christmas, Emily." And for the first time in a long while, I truly meant it. A year later, Christmas came quietly again, but this time it didn't hurt. I stood by the same window, where I once watched the snow fall, my heart heavy with loss and love tangled together. Only now, there was a different kind of stillness, not the silence of regret, but the peace that comes after a storm finally passes. Emily called that morning. Her voice was steady, softer than I remembered. She had moved into a small apartment across town, started working again, and enrolled Lily, my granddaughter, in a new school. There was laughter in her tone, the kind that comes when someone is finally learning to breathe again. "Mom," she said, "I'd like you to come over for dinner tonight. Just us, no decorations, no pretending, just dinner." I smiled, tears filling my eyes. "I'd love that," I replied. Before hanging up, she added, "And Mom, thank you for everything. You saved me, even when I didn't want to be saved." After the call, I looked at the old photo on the mantel, the one of me, her, and my late husband in front of our first home. The same house whose mortgage I'd once paid to keep her safe. The same house that almost destroyed us. That house was now empty, foreclosed after Mark vanished from her life. No one knew where he went, not that it mattered anymore. Some losses are blessings in disguise. I lit a single candle beside the photo, its soft flame flickering against the glass. I whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude, for second chances, for truth, for the strength to finally let go. Later that evening, when I arrived at Emily's apartment, she met me at the door, apron on, flour on her cheek, laughter bubbling from the kitchen. Lily ran up to me, her little arms wrapping tightly around my waist. "Grandma, Mommy said you're staying for dessert." I laughed through my tears. "Of course. Sweetheart, I wouldn't miss it for the world." As we sat together, passing plates, sharing stories, and rediscovering the rhythm of family, I realized something. The 12 red folders weren't an act of vengeance. They were my way of breaking a cycle, of teaching love through boundaries, not sacrifice. Because sometimes, love isn't about giving more. It's about knowing when enough is finally enough. And as I looked across the table, at my daughter's smiling face, I knew we were finally free.